Our previous video shared the work that went into accomplishing one of our major milestones to cruising in the Mediterranean on a new boat, and that was getting all of our gear and equipment from the US to France, where the boat will be commissioned and launched. Watch that previous video for the backstory. Here's an update on our shipment. As you'll recall, our stuff was packed up at our home in New Hampshire and taken down to the seaport in New Jersey. A couple weeks later, we got an email from the shipping company saying the container with our stuff was going to be cargo on the ship called Shanghai Trader that was to arrive in Rotterdam on March 27th. Luckily, we can track the ship on the website Marine Traffic. Let's take a look. I put the name of the ship in here. You can see Shanghai Trader, and you can see currently it's in Savannah. So it left the coast of the U.S., and it went down to Charleston, U.S., and on to Savannah. And we know how many miles it is from Savannah to Rotterdam, so we're a little skeptical that it's going to make it there by the 27th. That's just 5 days away, but we'll continue to watch it and see if the ship leaves the coast of Savannah here in the next day. Hopefully it will. We also have news on our new boat. We are going to be hull number 40. Pretty cool to know that it's all soon going to be very real. In less than 30 days, the boat will be off the assembly line and in Canet-en-Roussillon to be commissioned for transfer to us. It's very exciting. Okay, back to reality. This video will cover the next major milestone we reached, which is being able to remain in the waters off of France, Spain, and Italy, which is where we plan to spend the coming summer, for longer than a typical visitor from the US is allowed. Here's a little background. When you want to cruise in waters outside of the country of your citizenship, there are two primary things to think about: immigration and customs. Very generally speaking, immigration will impact how long you, as people, are able to cruise in specific waters and what documentation you will need to have or secure to be able to do that legally. Customs impacts what you have in material goods when clearing in or out of a country and while cruising in the associated waterways. The biggest thing you have with you is your boat, and there are rules you need to follow if you want to avoid having to pay a tax on the value of your boat because you've maybe stayed in a particular country or area too long. For most countries, there are also rules about drugs, firearms, animals, and agricultural products. This video will not be addressing any of those, just the boat. Each person has to review the current rules as they apply to their unique situation based on nationality, current permanent residence, means of supporting oneself financially, and history of travel. My husband Tom and I are both legal citizens of the United States, and we reside permanently in the US. We are retired and can prove we have sufficient savings to support ourselves financially. We are wanting to cruise in the Mediterranean for the full summer seasons of at least 2 years. It is this situation we will discuss in this video, but we will point you to resources we use to search out our options, so you can determine what your unique situation calls for. When thinking about the Mediterranean, the first thing to understand is that in addition to the EU, there is another agreement that dictates policy as it pertains to immigration and visas for their member states. This agreement is called the Schengen, and countries who follow these immigration agreements are considered to be in the Schengen area. The EU and the Schengen are not synonymous. Let's look at this map. You can see there are countries that are part of the EU that do not abide by the immigration visa policies of the Schengen and vice versa. This is why it is important to think of the Schengen when determining where your person can and should be, but to think more about the EU for where your boat should or shouldn't be and for what durations. Currently, U.S. nationals are not required to hold a Schengen visa when visiting Schengen area as long as their stay is to be less than 90 days over the previous 180-day period. Okay, so that's the first rule for us as people. Now for the boat. A non-EU flagged boat with a non-EU skipper can remain continuously in the EU for up to 18 months without paying VAT, their value-added tax. And supposedly, Each time you leave the EU, that 18-month clock restarts. We found this information on Noonsite. Here's Noonsite. You can see right now I'm looking at the country of France, and it gives me a lot of details about cruising in the French waters. There's also all these related reports and materials. Here's Schengen visas and VAT, and this one is updated as recently as December 2016. You can see many of these other documents are quite a bit older. So make sure if you're on the Noon site that you're looking at the most recent information. But this site has a wealth of information about all kinds of countries and areas that you can cruise in. So just keep this resource in mind if you're researching a new area to travel. We will begin our time in the Western Mediterranean in May, and we plan to cruise there this summer through the first half of October at least. So we definitely want to exceed the 90 days within a 180-day span of time. Since we will take ownership of our boat in May, this also starts the 18-month clock for our boat being in EU waters before we have to pay VAT on the value of it. Ultimately, we will take our boat back to our home waters in the northeast of the United States. So we really hope to avoid paying EU VAT. We have quite some time before we have to worry about that. Our most immediate need is to determine how we can stay in the Schengen area for more than 90 days. Since we are buying our boat from a French company and taking delivery of it in the port of France along the coast of the Mediterranean, we decided to first look at the options of getting a visa in France. We learned that we needed a long stay visa that would allow us to remain in France and other Schengen countries for up to a year. So that's what we applied for. Here we are as we nervously approach the French consulate in Boston a couple weeks ago.
All right, so we're in Boston at the French consulate, and we're here to get our long stay visa.
Yep, and we have a huge set of paperwork that we need to bring and have with us to make sure that we can answer all the questions, make sure that we can prove that we have the income to support ourselves while we're there, as well as boat evacuation insurance and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Making sure we're healthy, we're not criminals and all that. So inside this building, they got the power to make our next summer much easier. Allow us to stay more than the standard 90 days. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully we'll come out with good news. All right, so we 15 minutes through the French consulate, and looks like everything is in shape.
Yeah.
Super helpful. Yeah, they were easy to work with and took us both at the same time. So it looks like all the wheels are in motion.
Yep, so it looks like we'll be able to get our long stay visa that'll last up to a year with the possibility of extending.
Yeah, so France is the way to go.
We were so excited to get this milestone behind us. There was no guarantee we would be granted the visa, and lots of information you read in various places talk about how difficult it is to work with the French and their bureaucracy. We couldn't have found this further from the truth. The consulate was quick with answering all of our emailed questions, efficient and very kind in our meeting, and prompt in granting the visa and getting our passports back to us. When you file the visa application online, the follow-on communication will let you know exactly what you need to have with you when you go for your appointment. But for your planning purposes, here is what we were required to take. You submit your visa application online. When you finish it and it's accepted, you print it out and sign it. That's the most important thing to have with you. It has all the details that you put in your application. You also need the appointment confirmation. Once you print out the form and you have everything ready, you make an appointment at the consulate, and you need the confirmation that you have that appointment scheduled. You need your passports, and you need 2 loose passport photos. You need a letter saying you will not be employed while you're in France or in the EU, proof of health insurance, proof of evacuation insurance, including repatriation back to your own country, a copy of your current criminal record, proof of address in France. For us, this was the purchase agreement for the boat. On that, we indicated that we would be taking delivery of it in Canet-en-Roussillon in France. You need financial records showing your means to support yourself for the duration of your stay, a self-addressed stamped envelope so your passports can be mailed back to you, and you need exact cash or a credit card to pay the visa processing fee. Within 2 weeks of our appointment, we had our passports back in our hands, complete with a 1-year long-stay visitor's visa for France. Next in our series, look for additional videos as we achieve our other milestones and book our flights to France.